y'all, well met, it's Alan, and today is day 22 of the community Vlogmas, and the question today is, what books would you recommend that would introduce others to your practice? Here's the challenge, no more than 5 books. And if you'd like to step up to a greater challenge, perhaps consider non-pagan, non-witchy books, as more than likely others have already read pagan witch ones. So, a couple of things about this. One is that I have 5 books. 5 books. I was going to go over that and do 6. But the 6th book only partially influences my personal practice. So it may not be relevant, really, to introducing someone else to my personal practice. So I decided to just stick with the 5 books. The other thing is that not all of them are pagan or witchy. Or at least I wouldn't consider them to be. 3 of them are. One of them is kind of in betweenish, and the 5th one or another one is definitely not pagan or witchy. So I'm just going to go through these real quick, and I'm going to tell you how they particularly introduce people to my personal practice, or what they have been in my journey. The first of them I've mentioned before. It's called In the Shadow of the Shaman by Amber Wolf. When I found it, it had a completely different cover, and the cover was of a red-headed woman merging with a tree, or being the tree rooted in the earth and reaching her branches to the heavens. And that cover is part of what influenced my reading the book, because I have a very, very strong relationship with trees. And so that particular image kind of caught my eye. The way this book influenced my personal practice, it has a lot to do with the way I address the directions, the guardians of the directions in my personal practice. It has a lot to do with the way I sort of view deity in my personal practice. It has a fairly big influence on my worldview in specific, and it does deal with animal medicine, plant medicine, mineral medicine, and totems, and how we interact with those items as power items in our daily lives. So that book influenced my practice, so that's one good introduction to my particular practice. The next one is the non-witchy book, which is called In the Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford. This book has a lot to do with the way I do shadow work in my personal practice. It's the exercises in this book and the process this book walks you through, and some of the principles that it teaches really are the way I deal with my shadow in my everyday life. The third one, which I consider only sort of pagan, is the 4 Agreements. And the reason I only consider it sort of pagan is because the principles can be applied to any spiritual path, any personal growth path, any particular way of living. And it's a small book, but it is a huge mindset shift in a lot of ways when you really do the work in the book and you actually put into practice the 4 Agreements in your daily life. It can be difficult, but the 4 Agreements themselves, as you're putting them into practice, will eventually become second nature. The 4th one is definitely a witchy book. It's called Be a Goddess by Francesca de Grandis, or de Grandi. I don't don't know how she pronounced it. But this particular book, there's a practice in it called the spell itself. And that practice is basically, the book is laid out like a course in 8 weeks of lessons. I think it's 8 weeks. Or no, it's 15 weeks of lessons. The way it's laid out, it basically breaks down the spell itself and teaches you how to do it, and teaches you the principles and the whys and wherefores behind it, which I'm one of those I gotta know why people. This basically teaches you how to do the spell itself, which is a daily practice for me. One of the ways this book influenced me was, like, when I left the Christian religion of my youth, I had a big problem with the words faith and prayer and worship, because I viewed those as specifically Christian. And it took me, so I rejected those terms. And it took me quite a while to start to understand how generic those terms were and how they could apply to any spiritual or religious practice. And so it took me a while, but I came back around to using the terms faith and prayer and worship in my spiritual practice as part of my own terminology, my own languaging, because this book helped me work through the mindset around the words faith and prayer specifically, and then later I did the same work around the word worship. It's sort of a shamanic path. I would consider it shamanic. I would consider it a mystical path, definitely. And this is part of my practice. It's a lot of this book influences the way I do my daily work. And finally, the fifth book, which is more new age than witchy, is called You Are Psychic by Deborah Lynn Katz. I don't consider myself clairvoyant in that, like, this book is meant to teach you how to be clairvoyant. I don't consider myself clairvoyant. Like, I don't visually see things that could be predictive of the future. I do visually see colors, energy as colors in my mind's eye, but I don't specifically set out to interpret those things or to define them, because it's not what I want to do. Like, I mean, it's like I don't want to be clairvoyant. My natural state is clairsentience and claircognizance. So my natural state means I can sense things, energies, presences, things happening in my environment. Claircognizance means I know things that I shouldn't know. And it really doesn't have much to do with me sensing anything. It's just I have blocks of knowledge dropped into my brain that I really probably shouldn't know about other people. And I have absolutely no problem trusting my intuition, my claircognizance, my clairsentience. And this book is why. There's like energetic boundary practice in this book. There's protective practice in this book. There's the language of symbology, visual symbology, and is laid out in this book. And grounding. A lot of this book is spent teaching you various ways to ground effectively and to put up protective energetic boundaries around yourself, around your own energies and your own emotions and your own life. And so a lot of this book is my personal practice, my personal energetic practice. This book is a lot of the energy work that I do in my own personal practice on a daily basis. So all 5 of those books I would consider a good primer on the energy work that I do, the daily practices that I do, the inner and self-growth work that I do, and the things that help incorporate my spirituality into my daily life and make that spirituality the hub from which everything else in my life tends to flow. So definitely those 5 books. In the Shadow of the Shaman, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, The Four Agreements, Be a Goddess, and You Are Psychic. Those 5 books have a lot to do with my personal practice. So I will speak with you again later. Peace, blessed be, and namaste.